Hello everyone, welcome to my Call of Duty World War II Veteran Difficulty walkthrough, and this is Mission 2, Operation Cobra. And this is nowhere near as good as the first mission. The first mission was really well designed. It was a really nice introduction into Veteran Difficulty, and the fights were a lot of fun. And I was really hoping that this framework would carry into the later missions, but unfortunately there is some evidence that this mission really suffers from diminished quality, and there are some poor designs that I need to talk about when I get the chance. So, the first fight right here, you need to take the left path, clear out any of the enemies that are on this path. You can use your M1 Garand, you can also use your grenades. I'm very liberal with grenades right here, because I know I'll get them back from enemies when they drop them. And I'm also going to throw one smoke grenade here. And like I mentioned before in the first mission, do not trust the smokes too much. They are very unreliable in this game compared to Black Ops Cold War. I mean, look at that. You can clearly tell that there is no way that the enemy should be able to see me. Yet somehow they just perfectly see you through the smoke. I can't see them, and even when I'm in the smoke, they still know where I am. And one thing I've noticed about the smoke grenades is that they have the ability to stun enemies, but the stun is so inconsistent. There is no guarantee that the enemy is actually going to get stunned by the smoke grenade. Even if you successfully throw the smoke grenade directly next to them, they will not get stunned sometimes. If the smoke grenades were anything like Black Ops Cold War, with how consistent they are, with how good they are at concealing you, and with how much they don't allow the enemies to cheat, this game would probably have a lot better designs. But sadly, the second mission, the smoke grenades are hit and miss a lot of the times. And right here, you'll need to go to this spot. Where I'm at right now is a power position. It looks like the enemies can hit me, but they actually can't. And I'm actually crouched right now, but the lean is actually causing me to be slightly elevated off the ground. And because I'm using this spot right here, the enemies have a lot of trouble hitting me, and they never seem to hit me whenever I'm in that spot. And then once I notice a breather in the enemy spawns, I'm going to move over here. And you have to push the spawn. I'm almost certain that this is an infinite spawn, because I have stood in that spot for a while, and the enemies never seem to stop spawning. They'll just spawn on the top floor of the barn endlessly. It's crazy. I don't know why infinite spawns are back in this game, but this is completely unacceptable. There is no reason you should arbitrarily put in infinite spawn moments to force the player to move forward and put them in an even more dangerous position, just because it's a game. All infinite spawns serve to do is artificially increase the difficulty in a lazy manner, and this can cause the pacing of the game to severely drag, and you're not being rewarded for landing shots and involving yourself in a fight. It completely forces you to put yourself in some really awkward positions that feel almost unintentional. Like, I would rather the developers try something unique with their harder difficulties that actually takes thought, rather than just pull up a slider on a computer, change one thing, and that's it. And it's funny I should be saying this, because I played through Call of Duty Classic and I beat that game. That game doesn't have infinite spawn moments, aside from a couple of moments that actually feel logical to put in infinite spawn moments. I mean, you have time sequences, for instance, in Call of Duty Classic that actually feel accommodating for infinite spawns. But this is not a time sequence, this is just a moment where you're trying to push forward and you're clearing out the enemies. And there's no justification you can give as to why there should be an infinite spawn moment here. And if you don't go into that barn, the enemies just infinitely spawn. And furthermore, if you don't go into the barn, you cannot cause your allies to move forward. There are some really arbitrary and outdated designs present with this, where you have to push forward in order for your teammates to move forward. And I'm going to utilize something like that in this next part right here, because I'm just going to rush like a madman through this sequence right here. And this looks very crazy, but it works. You need to dolphin dive over to this spot right here and move forward so that the enemies that are behind you do not prioritize you. Throw a couple of grenades or use your M1 Garand to clear out any enemies that are camping directly ahead of you. And then once you don't see any enemies, you need to push forward to that stack of hay right in front of you. I'm going to throw a smoke grenade to ensure that my chances of getting to the hay bale are increased slightly. And I'm here, and this actually causes your AI companions to move forward. They're going to clear out the rest of the enemies, and the moment you hear someone say something, push forward. Watch out for any grenades. That right there is something you're going to have to bear in mind. The enemies throw their grenades a lot in this mission. There's going to be a lot of moments where you're going to see that grenade icon, and you're going to have to run away or throw it back. And this is heavily the case when you're moving alongside the tanks and you're right behind them. The enemies love to throw grenades on that part because they can't see you and they know exactly where you are omnisciently. It's just like Uncharted 2, where you can trigger a lost zone position in Uncharted 2 and the enemies can't fire at you, but when they decide to throw a grenade, they will omnisciently throw the grenade over to where you are, yet they still don't know where you are. It's like that, and it's not too bad, because throwing the grenades back in that section is easy. But it's still annoying nonetheless. And once we push forward right here, either one enemy is going to shoot at you, or they will all surrender. They'll mainly surrender if you push forward, but I have had rare moments where an enemy shot me, so you gotta bear that in mind, and take the time to clear out these enemies with the N1 Garand. There are a couple of healing items scattered around this area, and at least that's one good thing about this. Because of how the health works on this game, where it's not health regeneration based, and you can recover a large amount of health instantly using a health kit, there's definitely a bit of strategy involved with when to use the health kits, and also when to actually pick up a health kit. Like, if you see a health kit, don't pick it up immediately. Just get a battle done, and then go back and pick it up if you don't have any med kits. And it's the same case with Zussman. You wait until Zussman has a full bar, but you don't get it immediately. You get it when the time is right. And I like that with the healing system on this game so far. Now, right here, you're going to see some bullshit right here, because these enemies are somehow going to hit me when they cannot physically see me. And I think it's right here. Watch this. See that bullshit? How the hell did they see me? And how on earth were they able to shoot me? I couldn't see them. I was clearly inside a hole, and they somehow shot me. That right there is classic Call of Duty design that makes no sense, and considering that they're using a very similar framework for their enemies, regardless of whether it's health regeneration or just a health-based system, it makes no sense why they would design it like that. You cannot put in a framework for health regeneration into a game that is built around healing items, because then it leads to so much bullcrap that can occur, and it's just like that. And right here, you've got to memorize the spawn of the Stukas, and you need to really make sure you lead your shots, because what you're trying to do is, you see the explosions being generated by your shots, you have to make sure that the Stuka is within that explosion so it actually takes damage. And upon first starting this, the Stukas do not know where you are, but then at some point, one of your friends is going to say something indicating that the Stukas are coming after you, and that's when you gotta really make sure that you are prioritizing the Stuka as well. And I don't know if you have to shoot these initial Stukas, because I did get one moment where one Stuka went right past me, and then it just triggered the next spawn. So I don't know if you have to shoot every single Stuka on this part. I know in Call of Duty Classic there is a moment where you have to shoot a bunch of Stukas, and the first wave of Stukas you do not have to shoot. It's the ones that are on that runway, but the ones that are flying and are trying to dive bomb you, you've got to shoot them. And I definitely think the sequence works a lot better than the Stuka section from Call of Duty Classic. That section where you're playing as the British, and you're inside of that truck, and then you get out, and then you have to use the flak gun on the Stukas, easily one of the worst missions ever made in Call of Duty history, because it's so random whether you're going to take damage or not, and the enemies can actually damage you when you're on the flak gun. Makes no sense. It should give a separate health bar, or just make it where you're completely invulnerable, and the only way you can take damage is from the Stukas. But you can take damage before you even get off the truck, you can take damage while you're on the flak gun, and you can get so many moments where enemies just spawn on top of the roof constantly in that mission. It's just so unfair and so badly implemented. And the removal of health kits overall in veteran difficulty on Call of Duty Classic makes no sense. It's definitely clear that game is not designed for no damage in mind. There are just so many moments, like, I had to replay missions so many times in order to ensure that I had the right amount of health for a sequence that demands you take a certain amount of damage, because that's just how apparent the damage is, and just how easy it is for the enemies to hit you on that game, because of course it's the first Call of Duty game and AI systems weren't as advanced as they were back then. And the Call of Duty Classic game, there's a lot I'd like to talk about with that game, as we make our way over to the next encounter, which is just a sniping section that's very easy to do if you set up in the correct power position, and you just have to deal with 2 gunners, and once they're dead, the rest of the enemies will be taken out by your allies, aside from a couple of stragglers, and it's all very simple at that point. So I think during this time, I'll go on a different tangent, and I'll talk about the Call of Duty Classic mission, as I said. But there's just a lot to say about this game, and I originally played this game at a young age, and I really loved that game. I liked the story, and, you know, I liked just the gameplay overall, but I was mainly on recruit difficulty, and I can definitely understand why I didn't finish veteran difficulty, because veteran difficulty on that game is so poorly designed. It's easily one of the worst difficulties ever made, because it doesn't complement the framework that they set up with Call of Duty Classic. And the problems that already exist in the later Call of Duty games, they all started from this game. Like, the checkpoint system. Call of Duty Classic has the worst checkpoint system I have ever seen in any game ever. it can put you in an endless loop of being killed by enemies. It happens far too frequently on that game. The amount of times the checkpoint would trigger in a position where there are enemies right on that threshold, and I would get shot by them or melee to death. It happens so much, way too much on that game. And another problem with the checkpoint system is that there are times when the checkpoints don't trigger on that game. So there are times where you'll be doing this very long encounter that is supposed to have a checkpoint in the middle, and you don't get a checkpoint. You then die, you repeat that encounter again, and then for some reason you get a checkpoint in the middle. That would have saved so much time. And apparently it has something to do with your health, because if you have health that is less than 33%, the checkpoints don't trigger. Only that is not true at all. I have had moments where I've gotten a checkpoint when my health was less than 33%. And obviously in sequences where it's very easy to take damage because of how poorly designed the enemies are and how awkward the scripting is on certain encounters, you can't have that. So you're forced to either reload a previous save or just restart the whole entire mission. And it's just so tedious, and this could have easily been fixed if they had some kind of manual save system, and I've heard rumors about a manual save system on Call of Duty Classic, but I haven't seen it, and I don't know if it's something exclusive to the earlier difficulties, but if Veteran difficulty removes the manual save system, and that right there is just borderline stupidity. That is a great example of a developer favoring a broken game as a replacement for an actually well-designed game that is accommodating for the difficulty that's been set. But Veteran difficulty on that game, so shit, and the checkpoint is a great example of this. And why they opted for a health bar system that doesn't gel with the framework they've set up is beyond me. The lack of medkits makes the difficulties tedious and further strengthens the bullshit of Veteran difficulty. You have to do certain sections without taking any damage to at least stand a chance of surviving in the next sections of the mission. And like I said before, it's definitely clear that Call of Duty Classic is a game that is not designed with no damage in mind, yet they still opt for a health bar system. Well, I'm going to pause on this tangent right now, because we're doing this sequence. You need to stay behind the left tank. The left tank is the best one to be behind because it goes sideways, and when it goes sideways, it's a lot easier to hide from the enemies. But like I said, you have to make sure you watch out for grenades. If any grenades are nearby, you've got to throw them back immediately, or get as far away as you can. And when the grenade indicator goes white, it means it's nowhere near you. When it's red, it means it's a threat. That grenade right there, I could have easily avoided it had I just walked away, but let's just say the old instincts kicked in, and I decided to throw that grenade back, which... Try your best to avoid that. And once again, they're throwing grenades. Like, see then, I walked away from it and I'm fine. Although my partner died, but of course the AI, not a big deal in this game. The AI companions, while they are good when they actually push and they actually get rid of a lot of enemies, they're overall very useless. They're nothing compared to Call of Duty Classic's AI systems. The AI on Call of Duty Classic, easily one of the worst AI systems ever, even though they're a lot more active in killing compared to the other Call of Duty games, or at least certain Call of Duty games. But the amount of times on Call of Duty Classic where you're having to push your AI into a position where they're actually going to push forward, or you have to actually trigger an invisible checkpoint that just allows your allies to push forward, they do not give any kind of clarification as to when a battle is ended or not. Those right there are great examples of why the AI system in Call of Duty Classic is completely useless. And going back on my original tangent on Call of Duty Classic, another big problem I have with Call of Duty Classic is the melee. Like, you might notice with this game, I've not been doing a lot of melee. Well, that's because the melee on this game is pretty bad. I think it uses Call of Duty Classic as a template. I mean, while it does have a lunge, and the lunge isn't really the best when it comes to detection, overall, when you're not doing the lunge, the melee just has a very weird detection to it because you don't have any kind of knife on this game. You just use the butt end of your weapon in order to melee an enemy, and it's the same case in Call of Duty Classic, but that just messes with the detection. The bad detection, the lack of lunging, and the fact that the melee did not kill enemies instantly in Call of Duty Classic made it completely worthless. If you ever try to put yourself in a position where you want to melee, you are most likely going to die. Aiming your melee attack properly to actually stun the enemy is so hard to do. It's so tedious. It's just so clunky. I've never seen anything like it when it comes to a melee system. Thank God for the Call of Duty games that actually gave you a knife, and why they've decided to get rid of the knife in the later Call of Duty games and just force you to use the butt end of your weapon in order to melee. I'll never understand that. But the tanks have pushed forward, and you need to go over to this gate right here. I always go on the right. You can choose to go in the left building, but considering that I'd used this building many times, I decided to commit to what works. And I'm going to hug this side, which is probably not the best idea because the enemies love to rush you, and this weapon I'm using right now, the WW2, is easily one of my least favorite weapons. It has too much recoil, and the damage is pitiful. You have to pump so many shots into these enemies before they die. But look at the recoil. I'm having to burst fire this weapon to actually maintain proper stability, and if I was aiming down my sights, it'd be even worse. It'd be very hard to aim at the enemies. You might have noticed that veteran difficulty removes the crosshair. I don't know why they've removed the crosshair on your hipfire, because it doesn't impact the gameplay that much. I mean, as long as you're aiming for the center of the screen, it should be fine, but the problem I have with this weapon is there are times when it seems to aim off slightly to the left of the center of the screen. It makes it very unreliable as a hipfire weapon. I think the grease gun or the MP40 is a better choice compared to this piece of shit. I've gotten rid of the enemies, but look at that right there. That was very close. I could have died just then, but I just got a lucky break. And just don't try to push up as much. Just try to make sure you're moving as slow as possible so that you are able to survive. And once again, I'm going to use Zussman's special ability to get myself a free medkit, because I know I'll get other medkits back, and I know I'll be able to kill other enemies. And I'm going to push upward, and this is where you're going to need to shoot a bunch of ammo caches in order to destroy the tank killers. And it's all pretty simple, as long as you put yourself in the right position where the enemies will not be able to hit you. So resuming my tangent on Call of Duty Classic, the objectives you were doing in Call of Duty Classic, because of the fact that it was the very first Call of Duty game and they hadn't really gotten the pacing down properly, a lot of the objectives got so repetitive. They plant your explosives on this flak gun, clear out a bunch of these enemies, destroy this tank using the Panzerfaust, rinse and repeat. Like, you repeat those kind of objectives way too much in Call of Duty Classic, and it gets very repetitive, and it just becomes very stagnant and boring. And again, it's not really due to anything else, it's more so due to the fact that it was the very first Call of Duty game, so I could kind of understand it, because I mean, Uncharted 1, for instance, had pacing issues like that, where it was just gunfight after gunfight after gunfight, and that's what made that game really, really hard to bear, and the combat on that game is not very good. And another problem I have with Call of Duty Classic is with the mission structure. I just find that with most, if not all, of the American missions, they were actually fun, but then like 50% of the British missions were fun, and then 10% of the Russian missions were fun, and all the missions before you actually do the dam level, where you're playing as the British and you have to infiltrate that dam, like, they're fun, but then from the dam and onwards, every single mission just feels so tedious and just filled with so many bad designs that are just rage-inducing, and they just further complement the idea that Call of Duty Classic is a very broken game with no thought put into it. And I imagine it'd be the same case with the original version of Call of Duty 1. And I have no idea how the original version of Call of Duty 1 worked, but I would imagine it would work very similarly, even though I did see someone do a speedrun of Call of Duty Classic, or I'm sorry, not Call of Duty Classic, I think it was the very first Call of Duty game on PC, and somehow they were able to make all these game saves, like, as if there was a manual save system. That just seems like one difference that seems to occur, but everything else, it's all very similar. And I thought the story of Call of Duty Classic was cool back then, but now it's just pretty generic and boring. You get no time with the characters at all, and a lot of these characters just die out. Like Captain Price. Captain Price just dies out in the most unceremonious fashion ever. We don't see any kind of cool, like, animation that plays out where he dies. He just dies like any other enemy in the game, and he's just so forgettable. And then with your AI companions, your AI companions miss the most obvious targets, and they run past the enemies. They push you out of cover. They don't push forward, and they don't give clear indications that the fight is over. And on the topic of the most obvious targets that they just run past, the amount of times I've run thinking that an area is clear because my allies are pushing forward and I die, that's also been the case in other Call of Duty games. And actually, I forgot to mention that with the checkpoint system, the checkpoint system in Call of Duty Classic, it's pretty much the same checkpoint system that they've been using in the other Call of Duty games, only it's nowhere near as bad as Call of Duty Classic, and that right then was very bad detection on the surrender mechanic. Why couldn't they just let you hold square on that? Why do you have to aim? And why is the detection so bad? This game's been out for how long and they haven't fixed the detection on that? Are you kidding me? If Capcom can fix hitbox issues with the molded in the Resident Evil 7 demo, then surely Infinity Ward, or Sledgehammer Games in this case, would be able to fix these kind of issues. But no, they didn't. And this is the end of any encounter that involves your guns in this mission, and you're going to be commandeering a jeep and using the turret in order to fend off any enemies. And initially you're going to be driving, and the driving works surprisingly well. I mean, there are a couple of moments where you'll have to let go of the accelerator and turn so that you turn very sharply, but it's a lot of fun. And then you have the moment on the turret, which I don't know how best to avoid damage on that section, and I don't know how best to use the turret, because I feel like when you're not aiming the turret, you are a lot more efficient because the sensitivity isn't so rigid. When you're aiming, the sensitivity is so slow, and when you're not aiming, the sensitivity is very high. And I don't aim the turret at all because I want high sensitivity to get rid of a lot of enemies. And aiming doesn't really seem to make that much of a difference. And the bullets are projectile based, just like that turret sequence when we were dealing with those Stukas. So you probably have to memorize the spawns of the enemies when you're on the turret, and you'll be fine. And that's how it's going to work. I mean, I haven't died on that sequence at all. I mean, I only died on the Stuka section because I didn't really understand the spawns of the Stukas. But you'll be fine. And right here, you'll notice the bar in the middle. It's giving you an indication that Charlie is falling into enemy territory, so you've got to move very fast so that it strays into the green zone, which is your territory. And as long as you move fast, you'll be fine. Zussman will tell you where to go, but there are multiple paths present, and I don't know if these multiple routes actually converge onto the same position, but they just take longer to do. And if you don't follow Zussman's orders specifically, you'll most likely fail. That I'm unsure of, because I think right here, I did not take this path. I took the left path, and it still allowed me to converge on this position. And I didn't fail the objective, thankfully, but that I'm not sure of. Just follow Zussman's advice, and you'll be fine. And do you notice how with the Jeep, and also with the flat gun that I used to take out those Stukas, they have their own health bar? Why is that not the same case with Call of Duty Classic? Why is it that for that one mission where you have to pilot that flat gun in order to take out those Stukas, why does the flat gun not have its own health? And ironically, there's a mission later on in Call of Duty Classic where you're piloting a tank, and the tank has its own HP bar, so they clearly had the capabilities necessary to put in a separate health bar system specific to a vehicle or to some kind of machinery, yet they didn't apply it to that one mission where you're taking out those Stukas. If that flat gun actually had its own health, that would make a lot more sense, and you'd only have to worry about the Stukas and not the other enemies present. That would be a really balanced mission, and it'd be a lot of fun. But no, they have to specifically make it where your own health bar is being shown. The enemies can actually hit you specifically when you're on the flat gun, and it's just so bullcrap and bullshit that it's designed like that. And that's all I'm going to say on Call of Duty Classic right now, because there's not enough time left in the video for me to add more thoughts on Call of Duty Classic or really point out a lot of the bad designs present. Just prioritize as many enemies as possible during this on-rail section, and this right here you're going to stop, and you just need to focus on all the stragglers, and that will be the end of Mission 2. And I'm not going to conclude the commentary yet because I have a couple of bloopers to show, and they showcase some of the problems I was encountering with invisible barriers in that very first firefight of Operation Cobra. So, you'll see right here, I'm using my M1 Garand on this guy, and he's not taking any damage. That's a direct hit on him, and he's not taking any damage because there's an invisible barrier blocking the way. And then later on, I'm going to showcase this blooper where I'm trying to throw a grenade through an opening, but there's also another invisible barrier. And with that final blooper, this concludes Mission 2 of Operation Cobra. Stay tuned for the next couple of missions. Thank you all for watching, and you take care now.